Hello, writers, and welcome back to Spooky Writes, your channel all about writing. I'm your host, who's secretly a ghost, Kamal Onor. Today we're going to be talking about popular fiction. Now, this doesn't have to be good fiction. Today we're going to be talking about the characters who have been loved but are still written poorly. So what does Harry Potter, Bella Swan, Katniss Everdeen, and yes, Anastasia Steele all have in common?
It's the raven's call, the werewolf's howl, the vampire's bite. You search through the woods for safety, but all you find is... Okay, rights.
Popular fiction has given us many memorable characters. It's sold millions of copies. It's been turned into film franchises. But should you, as a beginning author, emulate these authors? Should you, as a beginning author, try and write characters that are like these popular... Should you try and write characters that are similar to these popular characters and these popular authors? Now, I know what you're thinking, because I'm psychic. I'm also a ghost. But you're thinking, but how can this be? I mean, all these stories sold millions of copies. Harry Potter was incredibly successful. Hunger Games was incredibly successful. 50 Shades of Grey sold millions and millions of copies, and yet all these characters can't be poorly written. Well, yes they are. I'm going to prove it to you. Because what all these characters have in common is that they are all incredibly bland. Bland like the taste of tofu. Bland like your grandma's Brussels sprouts. Bland like the taste of sandpaper mixed with rock salt. Because going back to the early 2000s, there was a big trend in popular fiction that you needed to make your characters as bland and as forgettable as possible. Your characters needed to show no emotion. They needed to be blank canvases. And I've always heard the argument that the reason why this resonated with so many readers is because the author is trying to just have a cardboard cutout be there that the reader can then imprint him or herself onto the author. So Edward isn't falling in love with Bella, who's bland and boring, but instead Edward is in fact falling in love with you, the dear reader. Now I think as an author, writing a character who is as bland and has the emotional well-being of a plank of wood, and not this plank of wood. It's the idea of self-insertion. It's the idea that instead of creating a memorable character who's going to have emotions and the reader is actually going to care about, the reader is instead inserting him or herself into the story. It's not Harry Potter beating Lord Voldemort. It's you, the reader. You are the one who is emotionally in the story. To me, I see this as very poor writing. I don't want to follow bland characters who have the emotional IQ of a leaf blower. I want to follow characters who have hopes and dreams, and characters who I can become emotionally invested in. I want to see characters cry. I want to see characters have hopes and dreams, and I want to see characters get excited. And I can't root for a character who's just, oh, yay, I won. It's always been a big sign of poor writing when I see characters who are bland, characters that have no emotion. I've always seen it as a very weak way of developing a character, to design a character as being purposely bland, as a character being purposely created to have a character just be a part of the backdrop. I want my characters to be front and center. I want my characters to bleed. I want my characters to have emotions. I want my characters to get excited. I want my characters to have all these things, and to purposely write a character that is bland just to try and have a reader insert him or herself into the story. You're making the reader do most of the creation within this, and I don't believe this is a good way to evoke a sense of familiarity with the character. There are many stories that have characters who you get so much more emotion and so much more from them. You get their hopes, you get their fears, you get their secret desires, you get so much about them. And all of this popular fiction that I've mentioned has very bland, boring characters that I can't tell you one thing about Harry Potter other than he's the chosen one. I can't tell you one thing about Bella Swan other than she likes Edward. Now, yes, most of these examples are pretty dated at this point. Unfortunately, this style of character has gone out of fashion, and I hope it never makes a return, because seeing popular fiction centered around characters who are bland and boring doesn't do it for me. I want to see my characters, again, I want to see characters that have fears, that have strengths, that have things that I can attach to, and I can say, I see myself in this character. I don't have to be the entire character. I don't have to replace the character's emotions, but I can see and I can relate to this character because I have empathy. And reading is all about developing empathy. Reading at its visceral level should teach you how to be empathetic towards other people. It should allow you to be able to see into someone else's heart, to be able to see into someone else's mind and get a feeling for what it's like to walk in his or her shoes. And if you're just taking the place of a blank character who is a blank page wafting through the land, it doesn't do it for me. And I think this is something you should avoid, especially as a beginning author. And I hope this trend never makes a return. I hope we don't see popular fiction that features characters that are bland and boring. And the thing that truly frustrates me is that people to this very day still talk about all these book series as though they're the crowning pinnacle of literature because they sold millions of copies, because they were turned into movies. And this is not how I personally judge good writing. And I think you as an author need to decide what is good writing for you. And I would highly recommend that you stay away from this type of popular fiction. Even though it resonates with a particular audience, no one's really talking about Twilight in 2023. No one's even talking really about Harry Potter other than people who read the books when they were kids and they're holding on to the nostalgia of Harry Potter. The sad truth is that most people only think you can be successful as an author if you're making enough money to pay your rent off of your novel. Unless your novel is turned into a movie, you're not successful. Unless you're making money off of your books, you're not successful as an author. And I want to challenge you to rethink this standard. I want to challenge you to rethink this type of thinking, because I don't think it serves you as an author, as a creative person. We should not be striving just to turn our work into money. There are plenty of publications out there that pay various levels, and I think you should start off submitting to publications that might not pay anything, but pay in just experience of submitting your work to publications. I don't read to put myself into the story. I read to follow another fully fleshed out character on his or her journey through this magical realm, through this fictional world, and I want to be standing next to that person. I want to be standing over the shoulder. I want to be sharing in this journey. I don't want to just be, you're bland and boring, I'm going to take the lead. Come along with me, Katniss. We must go and do the Hunger Games or whatever. I want a character that can serve as my guide through the fictional world. I want a character that I can share the journey in, and I can root for him or her to achieve his or her goals. And I can be over to the side and just be a silent observer. I don't want to actively, forcefully put myself into the shoes of the character and say, I have to take the lead because this character is so bland and boring that they're forgettable, that I'm just going to put myself into the shoes of this character. And this is poor writing. If we instead consider how well written the character Bilbo Baggins is in The Hobbit, how much do we understand about Bilbo? How much do we understand about his hopes, his fears, his entire history as a character? We get so much detail about him in this story that he has to be front and center. He has to be our protagonist. He's the one that we root for. We feel fear as readers when we read about his adventures. We struggle alongside him as he struggles on the journey, and this is what a good character should be. A good character should be fully realized. A good character should have hopes, fears, dreams, and desires, and shouldn't have the emotional whereabout of a blank page. A character needs to bring something to the story, and if a character doesn't bring something to the story, you might need to rethink your protagonist character. You might need to rethink a character. If a character brings nothing to the story, my recommendation would be to cut him or her out of the story entirely. If you can write a story without a character, there's no reason for that character to belong in the story in the first place. Full stop. And while, yes, I understand that popular fiction serves a purpose, it fits a certain niche, and not everyone is going to appreciate fully realized characters. Not everyone is going to want to be challenged to read higher level books. Not everyone wants to read books where they actually have to develop emotion for a character or develop empathy for characters. A lot of people just want to read books where they can just kind of float along and not be challenged. I'm going to challenge you as an author, as someone who is striving for writing better fiction, to write better characters, to write characters who are fully realized. Don't skimp on your protagonist characters of all things. Write your protagonist characters as being important to the story, and if your character is not important to the story, they might not be the protagonist for this story. You need to write characters who are fully realized. Do not force your reader to self-insert themselves into the story. This is weak writing. You as the author need to do the job of storytelling, and you need to create characters who are memorable. You need to create characters who are fully realized, and I have an entire playlist devoted to the idea to how to write better characters, from protagonist to antagonist to side characters. I highly recommend you check those videos out. They will be linked here or here, wherever. But again, I do just want to mention that I am going to be in the process of moving very soon, so I'm trying to get these videos out and scheduled as soon as I can, but it is going to probably take me a little while to get up and running again. And once I make this move, my plan is to continue making videos, but I do need to get internet set up in the new place. I need to get everything set up, and so that might take a little time. I might not be able to put out the shorts. I'm going to do my best to get the long form videos up and get those scheduled before I move, but there might be a delay on one of these videos, and I'll post to the channel and let you all know that's the case. Otherwise, as always, keep it spooky. And of course, here's your writing prompt for sticking all the way through the video. She was deathly afraid of blank. So set your timer and start writing. Thank you so much.